The combat arena on Station Veyrath smelled like ozone and fear. 5 alien instructors stood in a loose semicircle at the observation deck, their compound eyes, sensory tendrils, and bioluminescent patches all trained on the same subject below, a single human cadet, designation E7, standing barefoot on the durasteel floor of the sparring pit. Her name was Ilara. She was 5 feet 4 inches of soft pink flesh, no exoskeleton, no venom glands, no reinforced musculature. By galactic biological standards, she was a liability wrapped in a cadet uniform. Draxon, the senior combat instructor, a Vorath warrior who stood 9 feet tall and had survived 3 planetary sieges, crossed his arms and studied her with professional contempt. Deathworld designation, he said flatly to the other instructors. Earth. Category 4. Impossible, murmured Instructor Vess, a 4-armed Chelk whose species had conquered their homeworld's apex predators 3,000 years ago. Category 4 planets produce monsters. This creature looks like prey. She is prey, said Instructor Fyrick, a Saline female with scales that deflected standard-issue plasma rounds. My species would classify her as a mid-tier food source. Lean protein. Manageable fat content. Quiet, clinical laughter rippled through the group. Down in the pit, Ilara heard none of it. She was breathing, slowly, deliberately, rolling her shoulders, shaking out her hands. Her eyes were closed. She's meditating, said the 5th instructor, Jorel, a Phenii whose people had developed psychological warfare into a science. He tilted his translucent head. Interesting behavioral response to a threat environment. Denial, perhaps. Draxon said nothing. He had reviewed Ilara's file 3 times. Earth. Deathworld Class 4. And yet every simulation she had entered, she had survived, sometimes barely, always messily, never elegantly. He didn't trust it. Biology didn't lie. A creature without armor, without venom, without claws, without echolocation, without anything that made a soldier, should not be standing in a Category 4 sparring simulation with a Karath warbeast. He pressed the activation rune anyway. The gate opened. The Karath warbeast entered. It was 12 feet of muscle and aggression, a creature from a world where every morning was a war for survival. 6 limbs. Armored hide. Sensory pits that could track a heartbeat through 3 meters of solid rock. The Academy used them for final-tier elimination challenges, the ones designed to teach failure to overconfident cadets. The instructors watched. The warbeast spotted Ilara and went still. This was normal. Predators assessed. Even the warbeast, bred for violence, operated with instinctual intelligence. It was reading her scent, heat signature, movement patterns. Ilara opened her eyes. She looked directly at the warbeast. There it is, she said quietly, to no one in particular. She moved first. Draxon had seen 10,000 sparring matches. He had fought in 400 of them personally. He knew what a charge looked like, what a feint looked like, what desperate scrambling survival looked like. What Ilara did looked like none of those things. She ran at the warbeast, not in a straight line, but at an angle, cutting across its left flank, forcing it to pivot on its rear limbs. The warbeast swiped. She dropped underneath the swipe, so low her chin nearly scraped the floor, and came up inside its reach, driving her elbow into the junction point where its primary limb connected to the shoulder socket. The warbeast flinched. The instructors said nothing. It recovered fast, they always did, spinning with terrifying speed and catching Ilara across the torso with a glancing blow from its secondary arm. The impact sent her sliding 8 feet across the floor. She hit the arena wall, left a smear of blood on the metal, and got back up. She should be down, Vess said quietly. Adrenaline response, Jorel replied, but his voice had changed, there was something in it now that wasn't quite clinical anymore. Humans have a biochemical cocktail released during acute trauma. It suppresses pain and amplifies physical output temporarily. A biological last resort system. How long does it last? Variable. Seconds to minutes. Draxen watched Elara shake blood from her lip, roll her shoulder experimentally, wince once, and then settle back into that same quiet stillness. He watched the war beast reorient. He watched her watch it, not with panic, not with calculation exactly, but with something that was closer to patience. She's reading it, he realized. She's been reading it from the beginning. The war beast charged again. This time it committed fully, all 6 limbs, full velocity, the kind of charge that had caved in the rib cages of Chelk warriors and shattered Saline bone plates. Elara sidestepped. Not backward. Not away. Sideways, directly into the warbeast's charge path and then past it, one hand catching its armored neck ridge as it thundered by, using the momentum of a 12-foot killing machine to swing herself up and onto its back. The arena went very quiet. The war beast did what war beasts did when something climbed them, it threw itself sideways, rolled, tried to crush her. Elara held on. When it rolled, she tucked, using the creature's own body as a shield from the impact. When it rose, she was still there, legs locked around the neck ridge, arms wrapped tight, her full weight wrenching its head backward and to the left at an angle that the creature's spine was not designed to accommodate. Not enough to break. Just enough to hurt. The warbeast screamed. It thrashed. It slammed her against the wall twice. On the second impact, the monitoring sensors registered something that made Instructor Jorel inhale sharply. Her pulse dropped, he said. What? Draxen turned. The biometric feed. Jorel pointed at the display. Her heart rate. It was elevated, standard stress response, and then it dropped. Mid-fight. Significantly. The number on the display was lower than a resting human rate. Lower than a sleeping human rate. That's not possible, Fyrick said. She's in combat. Apparently it is. Jorel's voice was barely above a whisper now. What is that? Draxen looked from the display to the arena. Elara was still on the warbeast's back. Her face was calm. Not serene, not empty calm in the way that a mountain was calm, in the way that deep water was calm. Calm that had weight. He had seen Vorith warrior monks achieve something like this after 30 years of training. He had seen Fenii mental adepts discuss it as a theoretical state. He had never seen it in a creature whose species had only reached space 300 years ago. He pressed the intercom. Cadet E7. Simulation conclusion in 30 seconds. Prepare to disengage. Elara's voice came back, completely level, understood. She released the warbeast. She dropped from its back, landed in a roll, came up standing, and walked to the center of the arena. Behind her, the warbeast shook its head, disoriented, choosing the instinctive calculus of all predators. This prey is more trouble than the energy it provides. It retreated to its gate. The simulation ended. Draxen met her in the debriefing corridor. He was 9 feet of bone and muscle and scar tissue, and Elara had to tilt her head back to look at him. She was still bleeding from her lip. She hadn't wiped it. Your pulse, he said without preamble. It fell during the fight. Yes. Explain. She considered him for a moment. Then she said, my species calls it different things. Flow state. Combat calm. Some humans call it the quiet. She paused. We're a Deathworld species, Instructor. We didn't just evolve to run from predators. We evolved to hunt them. That required learning how to go still inside when everything outside was chaos. Draxen was quiet. The adrenaline you studied, that's what we feel before we go hunting. When we're afraid. She looked at him steadily. When we're not afraid anymore, something else kicks in. You weren't afraid of the warbeast. Not after the first 30 seconds. She almost smiled. It was predictable. He stared at her for a long moment. Report for advanced simulation at 0600, he said finally. Category 5 parameters. Ilara nodded once. As she walked away, Draxon stood in the corridor and thought about what Jorel had said. What is that? And he thought about what her file said. Earth. Deathworld Class 4. He thought maybe the classification was wrong. Not because Earth was less dangerous than Category 4. But because whatever scale they were using hadn't been built with humans in mind. He made a note to submit a reclassification request in the morning. Category 4, he wrote, then stopped. He deleted it. He wrote, classification pending further study. Current metrics insufficient. Then he went to find Instructor Jorel, because he had a feeling they were both going to need to rethink some things. Somewhere across the galaxy, on a pale blue world, a child was learning to sit still in the eye of a storm and call it peace.